I did not want to create athletes. It was about so much more than that. We were using gymnastics as a vehicle to create young men. We all have ego, we all have self-esteem on the table. We want to encourage them that self-esteem to be tied to the long-term product they're chasing. Most injuries aren't to the muscle, they're to the joint. We like the pump, we like the sweat. It can cause us to overextend and start training harder than we should before joints are ready. All it's gonna take is a little bit of patience. Bad days are usually followed shortly thereafter by a really, really good day. If someone stops at the bad day, that really good day never happens. The general public, I think, tends to be a little too short-term. But things take time. Do the work, get the basics. Get a little bit outside of your comfort zone, learn this new skill, and then move forward. Everything that's excellent comes from that. Anything's possible. You want it, go find a way to make it. You gotta dream big.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
It's time for you to man up, to once and for all tell your mind who the fuck is boss. I need a fucking answer. What's it gonna be? I don't know what it is about this fucking sport, but it attracts people that really need to do deep work on themselves.
I failed in this city. All these bad memories. I never really felt like I gave a fuck about me or my life. I almost killed myself, like.
Think about something that is going to drive you when it really hurts. Some kind of demon you want to fight.
This is not Pussy Man, this is Iron Man. Under pressure reveals true character. What are you gonna do? You're gonna be in Chattanooga, May 20th or what?
Coach Sommers is a legend, right? The former coach of the U.S. national gymnastics team and the founder of Gymnastic Bodies. He basically teaches 80,000 adults from around the world how to have better flexibility, mobility. You would have seen him on Tim Ferriss's podcast and in the book Tools of Titans, and he's got a lot to teach you about your own human body, how to move it, and he looks at everything through a gymnastics perspective. And what he says mostly is your connective tissue actually needs time to catch up to your muscles, and most of us lack a lot of basic mobility and flexibility that can make us better movers. And I really enjoyed my time with Coach Sommers, and we talked about Ido Portal and all sorts of other types of movement around the world, and I know you're going to enjoy this episode. And I also know you're going to enjoy what we're doing inside London Real Academy. because we don't play around inside there. I'm teaching people how to build businesses from their passions, whether you're a mover or a coffee maker or a nurse or a lawyer. I can show you how to become a key person of influence in your space, use digital media, social media, digital products, and webinars to make revenues and build a real business. I've done this with 3,000 students. I don't play around. London Real is the perfect example of what can be done, and I'll show you how to do it. Here's a little more about the Academy.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Christopher Sommer, the former U.S. national team gymnastics coach and the founder of Gymnastic Bodies, a learning platform training 80,000 adults worldwide. Here, you teach the gymnastic techniques learned over 40 years creating champions in order to increase the mobility, flexibility, and strength of your students. You're the author of the book, Building the Gymnastic Body, and were one of the world-class performers featured in Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans. Coach Sommer, welcome to London Real.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. That 40 years made me feel old.
Well, we want to drill into some of that knowledge today, I hope. First, I was wondering, how do we rank in London and the UK when it comes to, I don't know, our gymnastic prowess, our mobility, our flexibility? What do you see when you come here that may be different than the US?
You guys are crushing it. So if we go back 20 years, there was no good gymnastics at all. And then Britain got tired of getting their tail kicked, made a major investment, brought good coaches in. Early 2000s, changed the entire climate. Some of the national team coaches here are my friends, so we've talked. And that generation of almost frustrated athletes learned how to be good coaches. And now, my gosh, look at you guys now. Multiple Olympics in a row, tearing it up, outperforming the US. If you had asked, I wish I would have put money on you guys. Knowing you guys were going to do what you did back when, we would have cleaned up.
How does that happen with a population a quarter of the size? I mean, you've seen great teams and probably bad teams. You've worked with Bulgarians, Chinese, Russians.
Sure.
I mean, you know, what makes a great team?
You guys, the small size of Britain works to your advantage. So they brought a lot of good Russian coaches in. You guys had budget, it was all paid for, I believe, out of your lottery, the national lottery perhaps. Okay. So they received funding, and it was easy to get everyone together for centralized training because you didn't have 2 weeks to drive across the country, you had a handful of hours. So everyone could always get to Birmingham when they needed it. It wasn't, you know, super difficult. They could maintain quality. Your national training center in Birmingham is great. Lillishaw's really nice.
Okay, and I guess with the U.S., with people spread all around,
it's expensive to get them together.
Okay.
It's expensive.
Interesting. And our climate, though, doesn't necessarily get people training as much, or is that not true? I know you've been to Australia, where it's just a natural outdoor climate, which seems like it makes them more active, but do you
They don't have good gymnastics in Australia.
They don't?
I think because the country's so large. In fact, I was giving them a hard time. They were, I said, guys, you know, you used to be 13th in the world, and now you're 27th. It's time to, you know, something's broken. You got to figure out what's broken.
Right. So as a competitive national level, they're not getting medals.
No, they're going to rebuild.
Okay. But as individuals, they probably are more active and...
As a culture?
Yeah.
Probably. I'll say out in the countryside, outside London, people with extreme kyphosis, where they're really hunched. I've seen more people who are I guess from not enough activity out in the countryside, walking with just severe deformity in their upper back. And you know they weren't that way when they were young. You know, it wasn't the case. It was just between 50 and 70, if you're not moving, it's going to get you.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that and what you've learned about teaching adults later. You know, when I knew you were coming on, I thought back to an incident that happened to me about 5 or 6 years ago. I went to take a hand balancing class from someone who one of my MMA fighter guests had recommended. And I went to a place and happened to also be a gymnastics training center in London.
Okay.
And there was and they had the whole, you know, the bars and the setup and the rings and in the corner. I wasn't using that. And it was like a girls' class going on. There must have been 8-year-old girls. And I remember towards the end of the class, out of the corner of my eye, I caught them, and I think they all went and hung on like the high bar. And then the coach said, okay, give me 10 pull-ups or something like that. And they busted out the set. And then while hanging and waiting, they went then to the next set. And I looked at these little bodies and thought, what is going on here? I know very few adults who can do that kind of an output, and yet they were doing it consistently. And these were girls, not boys.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, what is going on with gymnastics? What's happening here that makes them do things that I can't even see strength training people do in the gym? And so I thought I might ask you a little bit about maybe what I saw and what you could explain to us. I recently have now been training kind of weekly in hand balancing. I took up breakdancing about 2 years ago.
Did you really?
So and I'd love to get your thoughts on that later, because that's kind of a weird, interesting mix.
Yeah.
And then I actually just got challenged and finished an Ironman race. So I threw some endurance on top of that, which was just a different thing for me to learn. And we can get to that stuff. But what did I see in that gymnastics class? And do you get people coming to you asking you, like,
how do they get it? Why?
Yeah.
It's something that helps people to understand is it's just natural movement. So what's unnatural is high levels of maximum strength, right? That's unusual for us. So we can take someone, for example, our easiest physical component as adults to develop is endurance. Start for someone from a couch potato, 6 months later they can run a marathon. Flip that on its side, couch potato, 6 months later benching 300 pounds. Not a chance in the world. Okay, so endurance, we build really naturally easily. Then in between there kind of is where that body weight's gonna fall, because you manipulate your body. That would have been what we did back in the day. Right, I've got to climb, I've got to swim, I've got to jump, I've got to move, I've got to pick something up and carry it. All right. A little bit of sprinting mixed in, mostly just moderate cardio. That's what we're designed to do as a human animal.
Hunter-gatherer.
Exactly right. Everything comes from that.
Okay. And so I'm seeing young athletes that are being conditioned with kind of that moderate.
Healthy, natural play with a little structure added to it.
Okay. Healthy, natural play with some structure. And by 10 years old, they're able to do incredible things.
Because it was gradual. Because what did they do? That's a mistake adults make, is they say, I want to do that. Well, that athlete is training 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 5 days a week. I'm going to jump in there. And what they didn't realize is a human animal is a human animal, that child started 1 day a week and rode that for a while. And that eventually became twice a week. And then that became twice a week for a little bit longer. It was never super hard. There was never a race. They were having a good time, but there was always accountability and structure. And if you put enough time in the bank, now you end up with great sets of 10 pull-ups. It's just a natural consequence.
What is gymnastics? If you had to explain it to people, what is the essence of what you
Competitive
teach?
Gymnastics or what we do?
Let's do both first.
All right, competitive gymnastics is going to be high-level acrobatics. It's going to be the highest complexity of physical movement that a human being is capable of. So we'll get people, they'll say, Coach, I get stuff all the time, Coach, you got to see this. And I'm like, okay, that was great. But now check this out. Here's a guy who just did 3 flips with 3 twists all in a single jump. And they're like, okay, I see. But we're talking about the highest expression of human coordination. We spent a lot of time working with some of the Chinese Olympic lifting coaches. You know, and we hear all the time, this is super complex. But compared to what we would do for competitive gymnastics at a world-class level, Not even remotely close. The loads are high, right? But some of the loads that we incur in training are similar. For example, a round off back handspring, just doing a simple backflip. In Olympic Training Center, we've floor plates down, them all measured up, and 14 times body weight. So day in, day out, turn after turn, 14 times body weight. What that does to the strength of the bone, the connective tissue. But that's kind of our competitive side. We don't do that as a business. We don't do any technical training as a business besides handstand. It needs a professional, a good eye, a good facility, someone who can make sure things stay on track. What we do is gymnastic strength training. We remove the acrobatic portion of it.
Okay, so no flips and inversions. That's when things get complicated and dangerous.
You got to do it right. I saw someone who taught himself, it was a YouTube video, and he fast forwarded it. But he was so proud. He had taught himself a backflip in 8 hours. So he drug a bed mattress out, put it in the back of his yard, and was just all by himself trying to do backflips. Landing on his face, landing on his stomach, landing on his side, all bruised, all red. And at the end of 8 hours, he kind of landed on his feet. And he was so proud, and his friends were celebrating. And I was just like, you have no idea the risks you were taking. I mean, it was fun when you fell and you got up, but you didn't break anything. You're not permanently injured. You're a lucky guy. And said, they were all celebrating. I was like, actually, it should be the opposite. This is to show you what not to do. Don't do that, guys.
Because even with a mattress, it's highly dangerous. Neck, brain,
neck,
head,
brain. What if he had kicked out upside down? I mean, just sometimes being young is a blessing, and sometimes it's a curse. Right? You don't have enough sense.
Yeah, indeed. So you take everything that you learn from gymnastics over, sorry to say again, the 40 years, teaching some of these champions, and you've removed the acrobatics component and said,
Absolutely.
What can we learn from the strength training side?
Yes. How do we replicate? So my story was, I never, so when I started, right, back in the Stone Age, we didn't even have the nice gymnastic floors we had now. We had wrestling mats.
Right, so there's no spring in the floor.
No spring whatsoever. The first time I saw one of those floors, I was like, what in the world is this? I was in college. But from all the plyometric work, we got crazy strong. And I didn't understand why people had to train to run. I had no idea. So I liked a girl who was on our track team. So it was summertime, it was off season. She was running with 2 groups in the morning for 12 miles a day. I jumped right in and never noticed a thing. Went right to running 20 miles, didn't notice a thing. I think we were doing 400 meters for 72 seconds, never noticed a thing, never got sore. Ain't none of that. All the way through college, did military time, used to train with all the big giant guys because we used the same weights. Okay. Then after all that stopped, the longer I was out of gymnastics training, the more my performance levels dropped. Didn't matter what I did. Didn't matter what I did. Losing strength, losing mobility, losing speed, losing endurance, and just frustrated. So all of this was trying to parse the gymnastics training experience down to its core elements. You know, try to, because I don't want to be in the gym 20, 30 hours a week trying to maintain old athletic capabilities. How much could I distill it down into so that someone who was older could have a life and still have superior performance and good health?
And the tumbling on those wrestling mats prepared your body to handle the pounding that goes on in those half marathons, almost full marathons, and even the endurance as well.
Oh, it was nothing, because if I could handle 14 times body weight, am I going to notice 1 or 2 times body weight as I'm running? No, it was nothing. I literally had no idea why people trained for it. In fact, most people, so right now I might run every 2 weeks, go on a long run every 2 weeks, and it's plenty. It's plenty, and it'll vary, mileage will vary. I run it usually through a wave, and I'm just getting ready to throw a little bit of sprints in. If most people would take care of their mobility first and their core strength first, do some basic strength, enough to allow them to get into some controlled progressive plyometric work, their running performance would increase so much faster. So much faster.
So it's the fountain of youth, really, gymnastics training.
Well, it hasn't worked for growing my hair back, so I can't say fountain of youth, but it could help for performance.
You know, I want to hear a little bit more about your story, but I would want to know, If you had to explain what your ethos is as a trainer, or your principles, I think that's really important because, you know, so many people talk about all these things and it all comes down into
they get all
what
flowery and poetic.
Yeah, that happens, and then it goes, but it all comes down to the what and the details, and that's
Sure.
usually about your why. And I was wondering how you would explain the way you...
Our approach?
Yeah, your approach.
Pragmatic, patient, no excuses. And a lot of that comes from national team coach, you know, where we did what we needed to do when it needed to be done. I looked at training in 1-year blocks because that's how long it took to have a significant impact on a physical structure. You know, anything less. I had someone once who sent me a note. He said, "Coach, I'm your most serious fan. This is my life. I'm so dedicated to it. No one works harder than me. I live, eat, and sleep this, but I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated with my lack of progress." So I was like, "All right, well, fill me in. How long have you been training?" He said, 3 weeks. It's like, dude, 3 weeks. So a lot of people don't realize they're kind of used to fast fixes. They're used to 30. Well, when Tim first reached out, he was like, "Coach, what can we do in 30 days? Now it's just Tim Ferriss. I don't want to tell Tim no, but that's kind of what I told him. I said, "Tim, there's nothing we can do in 30 days. There's nothing at all we can do." As we did some assessments, as we got into it, he started doing just super basic stuff, right? And then he surprised me on some of our conversations where he said he felt better than he had in years in just little stuff. What we found with adults is mobility goes first. Just like we're sitting here right now, what are the hip flexors doing? Nothing. What are the quads doing? Nothing. What's the calves doing? Nothing except tightening. They're tightening. Our exercises are all going to be linear. Nothing is out of alignment. We're going to do some cardio, but not much. We're not going to walk very much during a day. So at the desk, pec minors tightening, biceps are tightening, scaps don't move. First time we worked with adults, we just tried to do a basic stretch with them. They couldn't. They couldn't. In fact, what we consider mobility work was almost max effort for them. Just, you would watch people, so the scapula can pinch together. You would watch people break out into a quivering sweat as they tried to pinch their shoulder blades together because they hadn't done it for years.
And that was used to be a warm-up for your national team.
We didn't even do a national team warm. We didn't even dream about trying it. We did what we thought would be a super basic warm-up. I just super scaled down like I would do with little 5-year-olds. Destroyed them. Just destroyed them. And we turned around and was like, okay, well, we can throw this training plan away because they can't even stretch. They failed warm-up. Now what do we do?
And that was a big aha moment for you.
Big aha moment. We never realized how important obliques were for adults. We had no idea. So you can't be a gymnast, for example, and have tight or weak obliques.
And where are the obliques located?
They're going to be on the side, and they wrap around into the lat.
Okay.
We have one of our exercises is someone lays on their stomach, and they either hold or they rock back and forth. Super simple. Not a gymnast in the world that's going to notice it. We use it as an introductory. We used to use it as an introductory exercise for adults. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. We would stretch them. They couldn't do it. Was it glutes? We couldn't figure it out. Was it lower back? Was it glutes? What was going on? Could not figure it out. Finally, after 2 years it took us, we tagged that. It's an oblique problem. It's an oblique problem. As soon as we started going in and stretching the obliques first before trying to do lower back work, strengthening the obliques, all that issue went away.
So you're learning still. This is like a new laboratory for you. Because you're learning on
totally.
Not an inferior being, but a differently trained being.
You know, it changed my appreciation for how extraordinary our national team athletes were. Because for a long time, that was my daily norm. So when I first worked with adults, I was like, wow, these people are almost crippled. I don't understand. How do you get up in the morning? I don't know. I didn't even know how you get yourself dressed. And then as we spent more time with them and it started shifting that perspective of it's not that these people are so far down the food chain, it's that these other people are so extraordinary. They're so extraordinary, and they actually, one fed to the other as we figured out how to better help the general population and adults, and the where and the why. Then that in turn helped me increase performance of our senior athletes. So it was very beneficial because everything should be synergistic. Right? It's not like these guys are a different breed and have different requirements. They have the same physical being, same body, same requirements. So how did we get there? Same problem that we have here. Well, now we can hit it off on these guys. Like right now, Alan, my last elite athlete, in 4 or 5 weeks, has U.S. championships coming up. I don't train him personally anymore. I did 12 years with him, about 16,000 hours of prep before college. Yeah, it's a lot. We added it up. I know.
16,000 hours?
Yeah, with me.
Wow.
Not like playtime. I'm not good at playing in the gym.
What do you like in the gym?
We tease a lot. We tease a lot. We have a good time, but I'm very much direct, focused. I want your best effort now. I don't want it next turn. I don't want it tomorrow. Doesn't necessarily mean a successful turn, but I want to see forward progress. I don't want to see the same mistake twice. Same mistake twice just means somebody's not trying, somebody's not paying attention. I want to see a new mistake, or I want to see a little bit better, right? And then we just do that day in, day out, day in, day out. I once had someone come up to me. We'd been training. Alan was maybe 8. Someone came up, and we'd been working on parallel bars, and we're just working. We're not stressing out or anything. And he came up and he kind of tapped me on the shoulder, and I think he was trying to jerk my chain. I took it as a compliment, but he said, "You're like one of those damn Chinese coaches." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" He said, "You will just sit here, and you guys will work until you get it right." And I remember being puzzled. I was like, "Well, doesn't everybody?" You know, and as we start working with more, we do realize that a lot of people will set artificial limits, right? So when we work with people, they're like, what should my goals be? How long will it take? And I never care about any of that. You know, it's going to take what it takes. To my mind, you make one decision. You make one decision. I am going to try to do my best, or I'm not. If I've decided to do my best, then whatever's required to get there, right? That's what I'm going to do. If it takes 3 turns, great. If it takes me 10,000 turns, okay. But if I make where these people fall off is they want, well, if it goes well today, then I'll do it again tomorrow. And if that goes well, then I'll do it next week. And if that does it well, I'll do it next month. But that means that all along the way, all these series of decisions, they can fall off the wagon. Or if you make one decision, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, and you're not stressed about it. It's not carrying on. There's no browbeating or drama or any of that stuff. It's just, this is what I'm going to do. All right, well, now if I have a bad day, well, it's okay. It's all right. It's just part of the process. But what's nice is bad days are usually followed shortly thereafter by a really, really good day. Okay, but if someone stops at the bad day, that really good day never happens. You never get a chance. And it was right there. It was right there. So we learned just patience. Just patience. Things take time. We learn to be honest. Honest. So one thing that I really liked about being a national team coach was just the purity and the honesty about it. There was no bragging required. There was no marketing. It didn't matter who had a loud voice. You did a great job and you won, or you didn't. And you were rewarded for that. And if you fell short, there was no amount of excuses in the world that could make it go away. Right? And you had just trained for a year, 30 hours a week, 35 hours a week, and you fell short. Okay, you grieve for a few days, right? And you go shake their hand. But then after that, everyone, even though we get along, we're still competitive, right? But now, all right, how are we going to evaluate to move forward and do a better job? And there's no room for kind of cherished, dogmatic, individual processes. There's no room for that. If something wasn't working, right, or there's something that can do better, we need to change our game. So 40 years of that, I'll hear people now say, well, you know, this is really how I prefer it. And the first thing that'll go through my head is, well, is it working? See, no, it's not really getting me where I want to go, but I really like it. I said, well, why do you like it if it's not working? I thought you wanted to accomplish this, but you're doing something that's actually holding you back and not allowing it. Maybe you need to let that go. Like, I've known coaches who, in all the years I've been coaching, it's almost like they've just repeated the same year over and over and over and over. It's always, if I had a good athlete, if I had a better facility, if the judges liked me better, if I'd been lucky, if I was this, it was that, instead of sitting down and being honest. Like we tell our students, be honest about where you are. So we all have ego, right? We all have self-esteem on the table. Be honest about where you are. Enjoy it, embrace it. If it means being embarrassed, that's okay, because we want to encourage them that self-esteem to be tied to the long-term product they're chasing. Not pretend self-esteem where I am right now. I want to pretend I'm awesome. I want to pretend I'm great. I don't want anyone to see me train, or whether it's business skills or whatever. I don't want anyone to see, and they never grow. They never grow. And maybe something that helps people is all the heavy hitters that we've had a chance to interact with, they all have that attitude. No one's afraid to come up and say, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I have one friend who runs a $700 million fitness company, and called me on the phone when we first met. He said, I have 2 questions. Will you be on my board of advisors, and will you train me? Okay, he was not afraid to reach out at all. And all of them have that honest, open attitude where, you know, can you help me? And then also they're generous. They're incredibly generous on this flip side of that is, okay, thank you. Now what can I do for you? It's been a tremendous blessing being able to, you know, for years, the general public, I think, tends to be a little too short-term. A little too short-term, and I think needlessly so. And I think they get frustrated without needing to be frustrated. If someone could just help them, just, you know, guys, take a breath, relax, be a little bit uncomfortable right now, get a little bit outside of your comfort zone, learn this new skill, and then move forward.
With a 1-year horizon sometimes.
Well, a good buddy of mine, Rob Wolf, does nutrition, and he shared with me a Tony Robbins quote, and it was, most people vastly overestimate what they can do in a single day, and they vastly underestimate what they can do in a year, because they get bored. They get bored. But if they could just be a little mellow, our athletes, we teach them, guys, if I asked you to go and write me a novel tonight, 365-page novel, is that reasonable? And I want it by tomorrow. And they're, well, obviously not. And I said, guys, what if I ask you to write me a single page every day for a year? That's a different process. I said, one is just so extreme it's unreasonable, but the other one is, well, I just got to spend a little time. That's what we learned from national team, long story short.
And that's fascinating, because only by being a part of that national team would you have ever had that perspective, probably.
Which I didn't realize. So I had, when I outside, so in business, there aren't any world championships. And so that was an adjustment. That was an adjustment. Now, one of the best pieces of advice I ever had from some of my mentors who are great, you know, one of my mentors, his mentor was U.S. Secretary of the Interior. All right, so some very, very bright people. He was like, I had gone to, we were just starting in business, this is early 2000s. I was like, you know, sir, I don't know all this stuff. I'm not feeling confident. And he said, how long would it take you to create a national team athlete? I said, 5 years. He said, will it be hard? And I said, yes, sir, but it's nothing to panic about. I know the process, you just have to do the work. He said, run your business exactly like that. That best advice I could have gotten. It calmed me down, it made me patient, you know, and it allowed me to get outside my comfort zone. So I need to, if the championship is a successful business, then learning marketing is part of that. I'm going to go learn it. Where a lot of people, I see, they paint themselves in these really narrow lanes. I am a mathematician. I'm an accountant. I'm a doctor. And anything outside that lane, they're very reluctant to take a swing at. Whereas a national team, we were responsible for everything. Whether it was psychological prep, whether it was physical prep, whether it was prehab, whether it was strength training, technical training, it was all on our shoulders. So we learned to be a jack of all trades and weren't afraid at all to take a swing at whatever needed to be done.
And so many different events as well.
So many different events.
How many different events?
6 for the men, 4 for the women.
Okay.
And then thousands of elements.
Okay. And for the men, I mean, I'm just guessing, but I guess rings and parallel bars and floor, pommel horse.
Pommel horse. We got out of order, so floor, pommels, rings, vault, P's, and high bar.
Okay. All right. So you were used to becoming an expert at all of these things.
Yes.
And so going into business made you more open-minded to that approach.
We just basics to master.
Yeah. I had a guest in here. His name is Mantak Chia, and he's specializes in kind of Asian medicine. And he said, Brian, he said, a business is like a child. He said, they're 7 years old. He's like, why do you expect them to be, you know, a grown-up?
I like that a lot.
And he said, think of it that way. I was like, okay, it's an interesting point.
I like that a lot.
Alan, 16,000 hours. You worked with him from he was 8 years old till 20 years old, perhaps.
6 to 18.
How do you work with someone who goes through all that whole range of emotions and maturity? And
Sure.
I mean, that's a whole other side, the emotional side.
Well, by that time, I'd probably done 4 or 5 generations of athletes. And so a lot of time and experience under my belt. So things that would have stressed me out as a younger coach, you know, I'd been there, done that. When Alan his parents first brought him to me at 6, he'd already been doing gymnastics for 3 years. And he was kind of the local little mini superstar, right? But it was really bad technique, just really bad. But he was talented enough because his mom was a great gymnast, his dad was a good athlete. He was talented enough that he could get away with it. But I'd been around for a long time and I saw a good spark. I mean, part of it is how do they move, blah, 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 but part of it also is how do they handle themselves, and almost a glint in the eye, right? A glint in the eye, and he had that. He had that. And so that they came in, it's like, you know, I see potential here. He's 6. You know, so...
Which means you never know.
You never know.
Right.
So there were some physical issues that we needed to adjust. His lower back had been improperly prepared. So we had to fix that. He's by nature, people can check him on Instagram, A Bauer Power, right? He puts up some good media. He looks like this perfect physical specimen with wonderful mobility. And he was always strong, but incredibly tight, incredibly tight. So all that mobility had to be developed.
Okay.
Had to be developed.
What does that mean, tight, for people that might not understand that?
Well, you see some people who naturally are very flexible. So they can do splits, they can do bridge, they can do all these things, and it's just what their body is. And then you have other people who are just naturally strong. Once in a while, out of thousands and thousands, once in a while I get someone who's both, naturally. I've had maybe 5. They all drop out. Every time.
Why?
The people who are supremely talented, everything has always come easy. It's always come easy. And as soon as a stumbling block or something that's challenging is set in front of them, their learned behavior is to bail. Now, that's actually for the rest of us who are more mortals, right, regular humans, that's good news. That's good news. So that means we can outwork them. Because all the talent in the world doesn't matter if you don't use it. Doesn't matter in the slightest.
Interesting. So you can be over-talented.
Oh my gosh, we've had athletes come in that I taught them a back handspring in, I think, half an hour. I mean, just crazy stuff that take anyone else years to learn. These kids are just, we had one of my teammates in high school had a twin brother. I'm still emotionally scarred from this because his twin brother came in and he did a standing front flip. He just tried it and did it. No training, no progressions, nothing. Did giant on high bar, just went up and did it. And I've been training for years. I'm like, okay, that hurts. That hurts. But that's only part of, you know, that talent's just part of it. Think about the personality type to engage in mindful practice for 16,000 hours. Especially in today's day and age where everyone is so sensitive. You know, and you imagine how many times Alan heard no. No as in, no, that's not right. Again, again, again. That was better. Again. Oh my God, that was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. What were you thinking? You know, for 12 years. You know, and just layer upon layer. I think that's why the Olympics, people enjoy it so much, because they, even if they haven't gone through the process, they know what went into create. They've had a little taste and they appreciate it.
They meaning who?
The audience, you know, those billion people who are watching.
We can feel that something has taken a long time.
We can feel, we've had some workouts, and then we hear 16,000 hours. Wow, I can't even make my bed every day. You know, and you guys did what for 16,000 hours for how many years? But, well, how about, do you know the author Stephen Pressfield?
Yeah, I love him. I love the War of Art, and I love the concept of resistance. I teach it to all my students.
And that's a great story. This is a guy who loved writing, typewriters on the wall, but didn't sell anything for 13 years. Nothing. In fact, people repeatedly told him, you are the worst writer that's ever been born. There is no hope for you. There is no hope. You need to do anything but this. But he loved it, and he didn't care. And he just kept chipping away at it till he was awesome. Till he was awesome. I mean, I personally love stuff like that. I love stuff like that, because the first thing, I've never understood people who are just content to be admiring of other people or cheerleaders. I've never understood that. They'll see someone do something well, and they don't immediately think, that was awesome. I wonder how I can do that. I've always been wired that way.
And that's the kind of athletes you're looking for at an Olympic level, more so than the genetics and the talent.
Oh, absolutely, because everyone at the Olympic level is genetically gifted. I have a good friend who was the Bulgarian Olympic coach, and we would go round and round and round, because I'm American. I'm American. Anything's possible. You want it, go find a way to make it. Figure it out. And Rumen was
the ethos of America, right?
Yeah, maybe we take it too far, right?
Maybe.
We take it too far.
We forget, though, that's the way we think, and that's not the way everyone else thinks.
It is not the way everyone else thinks, which is a shock. So Rumen was like, no, champions are born. He says, you can change a human being 2%. I was like, Rumen, no. And we're Americans. You can push. He said, fine, 2.5%. 2.5. I never did get him to go more than that.
What percent are you favoring?
You know, I have seen amazing things. I had one athlete that took me when he was little. We had a range of athletes on my team, from our national champions to kids that had trouble walking straight. But what they all had in common were these awesome attitudes. No giving them at all, no backing off, 100% committed to giving their best. That meant more to me than any amount of medals, in fact. So I had one boy, it took me 3 years to teach him a cartwheel. 3 years. I used to joke with him, I could have taught someone in a wheelchair to do a cartwheel sooner than it taken me to teach you. And he wasn't a great scholar. But what there was no backing off. So as he got into high school, here's a kid that was just average academically, average athletically, became one of the best athletes in the region in the U.S. U.S. is broken into 9 regions. Okay, so he was one of the best athletes in the region, not at Allen's level for a national or international, but you know what? If God didn't give it to you, God didn't give it to you. But then the same child, the same athlete, put himself into the hardest, most demanding high school in the Phoenix area. So he would come home from practice at 9, do homework till like 2 in the morning. But the interesting thing is, never moan, never complain, right? Parents were just mellow as long as he was doing his best. He's a pilot in the Air Force now.
And that's the mentality of the training that you probably instilled.
Well, we try. I did not want to create athletes. I had no interest in creating athletes. To my mind, the last thing the world needed was another group of knuckle draggers. That's not what we needed. We were using gymnastics as a vehicle to create young men.